Welcome back to AI for the Humanities. I'm Megan McInnes Dominguez, Associate Professor of Spanish at the University of Delaware. And this channel is your go-to resource for exploring the intersection of generative AI and humanities education. We'll dive into the latest developments in large language models, discussing their benefits, challenges, ethical considerations, and practical applications in your classes. Our goal is to examine how these powerful tools relate to humanities education and how the humanities can shape the future of AI. Whether you're new to AI or have been experimenting with these technologies in your teaching or study, you'll find valuable insights and practical tips here. Join us as we navigate this exciting frontier, exploring how the humanities can contribute to and benefit from the AI revolution. Today, I'm thrilled to reintroduce Elizabeth Kirsch, who recently completed her master's degree in Spanish pedagogy here at the University of Delaware. Elizabeth was one of our outstanding interns in the AI for the Humanities internship program, where students explored diverse LLMs, image generators, and audio tools. This is her second video for our channel. Elizabeth tackles one of the most pressing questions facing parents, educators, and policymakers today. How is AI, specifically ChatGPT, affecting our children? From classrooms to living rooms, AI tools are becoming increasingly present in children's lives. But what does this mean for their development, learning, creativity, and safety? Drawing on research from psychology, education, and technology studies, Elizabeth explores how ChatGPT and similar tools are being used in academic settings, from personalized learning support to digital literacy curriculum, as well as in leisure activities like creative play and family bonding. But she doesn't shy away from the difficult questions. What happens when children form attachments to AI chatbots? How do we protect them from bias, misinformation, and online predators who might weaponize these tools? How do we ensure the benefits don't come at the cost of crucial human relationships and developmental milestones? Elizabeth's careful humanistic approach reminds us that technology is never neutral. It's shaped by the values we bring to it and the choices we make about its use.
Hello everyone, my name is Elizabeth Kirsch, and this is my second video that I am making as part of my graduate internship in the class AI for the Humanities at the University of Delaware. For this video, I am covering the benefits and drawbacks of AI for children, with a focus, again, on ChatGPT. The agenda for this video will be as follows. First, I will introduce the topic. Next, I will discuss the benefits and drawbacks of AI and ChatGPT for children in two different ways, in academics and career, and then in leisure in general. And then finally, I will conclude the video and put all the links to everything that I used for research at the end. So to introduce the topic and kind of orient the audience here, I decided to do ChatGPT drawbacks and benefits for children for two reasons. Number one, because I am a K-12 teacher. And two, because I have really noticed the ways that technology is affecting not only adults, but children. I recall one day I was working and I interrupted a child who was playing a game on their Chromebook. And this child was 5 years old. And I came up and kind of tapped them on the shoulder because they weren't responding to my words, very zoned in on the screen. And finally, I went to pause what they were doing on their Chromebook because I couldn't get their attention any other way, and they batted my hand away. I had never seen, hit my hand away. And I had never seen violence in any form from this child before. Verbal, physical, nothing. And the fact that technology in that moment had the power to provoke that in that child really made me want to look into more of how technology is affecting children's development. And AI, again, has a special role in this because it's a technology that we don't fully understand yet, even as adults, but is going to be around our children and is already around our children. So that is why I wanted to study this topic for my video. I have put here a peer-reviewed article from Psychology Today that talks about already what are some of the issues with this excessive technology use that our society faces for adults, even sedentary lifestyle, social development, psychological concerns, etc. That is no secret, obviously, and it's also no secret that children are being exposed to technology at a faster rate today than ever before. And like I said, AI has a special part in it because we don't yet understand it as adults. And lastly, as part of this introduction, I would like to stipulate what I call a modern day balancing act. I would like to stipulate that AI is an example of this because we are trying to kind of race against the tech companies in education right now. The technology is coming out, it's developing very fast. We've all seen this surgence of ChatGPT in the past few years. And we are trying to, at the same time or faster, develop curricula and implement curricula that's going to educate not only adults but our children on how to be safe on these platforms. So I've called it a balancing act because we are trying to balance exposure to this technology with bringing the education up to scale. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So we will be first talking about AI and ChatGPT for children in their academics and in what could be their future careers. For the introduction to this topic, I have put what I imagine a middle schooler or high schooler would ask ChatGPT, something related to school. My teacher is making us read The Great Gatsby. Can you help me with my essay? So first, talking about a benefit for AI for children in the setting of academics/career is that it is preparing them to be modern day citizens. AI is not going anywhere. It's going to develop more. It's going to seep into more and more careers. That is what the data is showing across the board. And children need to be prepared for that. They're growing up in a world that is surrounded by increasing technology, and they need to be prepared to interact with that technology and be empowered with knowledge about it for their own safety and for the advancement of themselves as a citizen. How do we do that for them? Because it's not like they're going to be able to do it themselves. We have the responsibility of sharing digital literacy with them, we being the adults in their lives. Talking about this, I have found what I thought was a good resource for grades 6 through 12. It is on Common Sense Media. Here's an example of one of the lessons from Common Sense Media for digital literacy. Labeled grades 6 to 12, it's about AI chatbots and friendship. So for example, we could be empowering children with the knowledge that AI can affect their idea of friendship and can affect their idea of what is human or what is not human, so that they don't have confusing feelings towards a chatbot. They recognize it as a bot. And you go through the lesson, it goes through some key vocabulary, it also goes through some scenarios, and it empowers them to identify how the bot, yes, it helps people, but what is the distinction between a tool that helps you and a real friend? So encouraging them to draw that boundary between technology relationships and human relationships. That is an example of how we could be preparing them to be modern day citizens with that knowledge, and an example of how a student would benefit from knowing that knowledge as opposed to a student who hadn't had digital literacy training. In addition, I found a report that talked about a 2019 technology that was developed by some researchers. They developed a robot who is designed to teach technology and AI concepts to early childhood aged children, preschool aged children, and kindergarten aged. So here's an example of how the researchers used, the robot to actually teach AI concepts to some children who were a part of this study. So they had children learning that AI robots can learn by having them teach the robot the rules of rock, paper, scissors, and then seeing that the robot was able to predict based off of what they taught them. They had the robot also teaching the children how AI bots can learn patterns based on a training set of data by having the children show the bot what was versus wasn't healthy food, and then the robot is able to guess a group of food based on that. And then finally, they wanted to teach children that AI robots do not always follow the rules by having them specify musical emotions to the robot, what songs associated with different emotions, and then the robot makes a mistake playing back a remix that doesn't identify with the emotion the child had been talking about. And that is some simple ways that they identify that AI could actually be used to teach about AI to small children. I was looking into this concept more myself as well, and I asked ChatGPT, what should kids know about AI privacy? Now, in asking ChatGPT, what should kids know about AI privacy, I found that it did give me some useful content. It talked about what privacy was in a way that made sense to explain to children, examples of AI in their lives, and the relationship between AI and privacy. It did, of course, emphasize that it's not all bad. It's a little bit biased in that way. And it provided some resources as well. So Common Sense Media, I already talked about, was a digital citizenship curriculum that I showed a lesson from that I actually found myself, and I was glad to see when I asked ChatGPT that it was giving me the same kind of resources that I was seeking out and vetting myself. However, we have to remember that for all that it says about explaining digital citizenship to children and protecting them from privacy, there is going to be a level of hypocrisy coming from the tool because, as I discussed in my last video, ChatGPT, the default that you would have to toggle off of if you knew about it in the settings is for them to collect your data and have the bot learn from it. And I really can't stress enough that it needs to be humans teaching children about these things. Because of the bias that exists in these models and their companies, I really think that the primary source of knowledge about AI should be coming from humans to other humans. Now, the drawback to these curricula that are being developed is that there is a delay in implementation. Again, we have that race going, that balancing act between the developing technology and trying to keep up with it, keep educating our children as it's coming out. And professional development is not seeming to happen for teachers on these tools. I read through an educational trends report from 2024, and there wasn't a current statistic on finite number how many K-12 schools have added AI to their digital literacy curricula or that have that curricula, but what I was able to find was that 13 states are currently, in 2024, were currently working on or had developed AI guidance for their schools. 63% of teachers said that they had used ChatGPT on the job compared to 42% of their students. So in 2024, now probably even more in 2025, it's very much in the schools. And this was the concerning one, our third statistic, was that 96% of teachers reported that they had not received any professional development on using AI for learning, despite the growing use of AI in the classrooms. Another drawback to this same point is that even if we are able to effectively have professional development for all educators on AI, right, that is the ideal. But even if that happens and we are fully ready and we feel empowered to spread that knowledge to our students, the accommodation of that type of curricula in the current educational climate, K-12 at least, is what I can speak for. From my point of view, I am questioning how realistic that is. Because as you can see in this figure from the Rand Corporation, we're looking at the left side of these bars here. The time that elementary students spend on social studies and science currently is about 3 hours each week. We can imagine it's even less for related arts classes. For example, I have experience in teaching related arts Spanish in elementary schools, and what I did was I taught a class 45 minutes, one time a week. So taking those things into account, we can imagine even less time would be able to be dedicated for things like AI, digital literacy, that are not a core subject. My hope is that they would be incorporated into science curricula somehow. But again, we're looking at science and social studies versus math and ELA, and there's not a lot of time dedicated to them right now. So it will be for sure a challenge implementing these curricula, even if we are able to effectively empower teachers to be prepared to do that. Another possible benefit of AI in children, and specifically academic/career, is deeper individualized learning. And I covered this a bit in my last video, showing examples of how ChatGPT is effective in creating comprehensible text for different populations of children and providing best practices also for unique populations of children in specific groups. And I have also seen some technology being developed. For example, some Harvard graduate school professors talked about on a podcast how they developed an AI technology that could, it was a smart speaker, that could do read-alouds with children. And I'm going to click on that link to show what was said about it. So here is the transcript from their podcast in which the professors talk about it, Harvard EdCast, if anyone is curious. It says, for example, over the past few years, I have developed and tested AI companions that engage children during activities like reading books, watching television, and storytelling. And basically what is being done, they say, is that a smart speaker steps in to simulate the role of an adult who would read a story aloud, prompt questions to get children to think more deeply about the content. And it says the AI listens to the children's response and offers small hints as well to help them guide their thinking like a caregiver or a teacher would. And they did find, they say, that children who engage in interactive dialogue with the AI bot in this way comprehend the stories better and learn more vocabulary compared to those who just listened to the story passively. However, importantly, it also says, the professors also specify that this is not a replacement for a real human. Because look, while children were quite talkative with AI, they were actually even more engaged when speaking with a human. So it's not replacing the human, but it can simulate some learning when someone is not available to provide the child that experience, is what they're showing here. So it's able to provide individualized learning for children in that way. And I also put an example here of my own exploration with ChatGPT of how it provides deeper learning about a topic. Christopher Columbus is what I was looking at. So I compared the Google overview that a child might find about Columbus if they're learning about it versus AI ChatGPT overview. Here's the Google overview over here. Goes over birthplace, siblings, overview, says Christopher Columbus was an Italian explorer and navigator. Doesn't say much more than that in the overview. Versus the ChatGPT overview, when I asked ChatGPT who is Christopher Columbus, it gave me the details that Google gave me. It also gives me some specific details that could help children clear up misconceptions and help them to build full, holistic pictures of historical figures instead of just the good or just the bad. For example, it shows how he was trying to find Asia, but instead landed in the Caribbean. And it talks about controversy, how it has come to light, Columbus's role in genocide, which has complicated how he is viewed as a historical figure. And these things are important for children to know, to be able to build a holistic view of historical figures. And we saw that Google was not offering that type of deeper learning, but ChatGPT is. So all that to say that ChatGPT is a tool here that can help to deepen children's learning and help them to think critically about, for example, historical figures. However, where there is a benefit, there is a drawback. Moving myself here so the audience can see. The drawback to this benefit would be academic dishonesty and possible dependence on AI. So I'll start by talking about, this is not K-12, this is college students, but my point in saying this next point is that if it can happen with college students, it can happen with K-12 as well. I looked at a survey that determined that 86% of ChatGPT college student users who were asked about their ChatGPT use said that they hadn't been called out by their professors, or professors are not aware of their use of the AI technology. Now, this just could be that the professor had said it was okay, and so they didn't need to report it to the professor individually. We don't know. It's a very high number. However, what we can assume is that if college students are getting by with ChatGPT and not having that detected by the professors, the same could happen with younger students as well. I'll also discuss this 2024 Hetchinger report, which I will click on. It found that students' use of specifically ChatGPT was linked to lower test scores in math. So, as a counterpoint to the deeper, more individualized learning that we just saw, kids who used ChatGPT as a study assistant, they did worse on the test. So, this was a UPenn study that this report is telling us about. Turkish high school students who had access to ChatGPT while doing practice math problems did worse on a math test compared with students who didn't have access to that tool. Those with ChatGPT solved 48% more of the practice problems correctly, but they ultimately scored 17% worse on a test of the topic that the students were learning. What I'm thinking this is attributed to is the fact that ChatGPT and other tools can make students think that they know more about the topic than they actually do. It provides them with a safety net that they're not going to have on exams or in certain situations in life. And of course, they have not developed the critical thinking skills to the extent that an adult would to know what their learning truly feels like when they have learned it versus what a few correct practice problems or being able to do it with help feels like. They're still learning all of those things. So that is a drawback, is that even though it can serve as a tutor, it can serve as something to individualize kids' learning, it can also kind of get in the way of what they know and make them think that they might know more than they actually do. Another important benefit that has been identified in children's use of AI towards academics or career is making vulnerable populations of children feel seen. For example, here I'm going to talk about some students with disabilities. So, AP News has called AI a game changer for students with disabilities based off of this teen seen here, her story with dyslexia. And I think it spotlighted another child as well. I'm going to be focusing on this one for the sake of time and content. So, this teenager identified that in dealing with dyslexia in her earlier years, I just assumed I was stupid. It really took a toll on her mental health and confidence. She described that she was able to use a customized AI-powered chatbot, and the quote here says, "I would have just probably given up if I didn't have them." So clearly using an AI chatbot, at least for this student and her disability of having dyslexia, really was able to give her a more positive view of her school and, importantly, towards herself. And the same was found in children with health complications, for example, children with type 1 diabetes. There was an AI bot that was developed for specifically small children who had been diagnosed with type 1 that I read about in the International Journal of Social Robotics. It's called Robin. It can be seen here with a researcher. And what they did was they designed it as a friend to teach small children who had just been diagnosed about their condition and help them to learn how to manage their condition, and notably encourage them to still have confidence and to still engage in social behaviors and other developmental behaviors that children of their age who are not dealing with health complications get to do. So what they found was they need more studies done on the effectiveness of Robin, here's Robin, in teaching the children about specifically how to manage their condition. But Robin was found to be successful in supporting their self-efficacy, their confidence in themselves, small children being diagnosed with a life-changing condition, and AI here is able to help them feel more confident and comfortable with themselves. Of course, where there is a benefit, there is another drawback again. So the drawback here is the question about whether or not this interaction with AI and children, especially as these friend bots, are jeopardizing human relationships or not. And I'm going to refer back to the same podcast that I talked about before from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, because it is a very useful resource that talks a lot about it. Specifically, there is a part that talks about concerns of children's language with AI. So here it says, what the researchers found was that children talking to AI were giving demands or even insulting it, the bot. And we're looking on the transcript, there was laughter after talked about this, but then they go into what the concern truly is. The concern, they say, is that these behaviors would carry over into children's real-life interactions with people, which they stated they don't have conclusive evidence for it yet, but there's some evidence that children can pick up linguistic habits from their conversation with AI. So it's uncertain, but it does raise a concern of if children are interacting one way with AI, how much are they drawing the line between that and a human, and are they able to know or be aware of the language that they're using versus what they should or should not use with people in their real lives. And the next idea I'm going to talk about is the importance, again, of authentic human relationships to children's development. And I did not feel the need to put any study or research behind this because it is clear. Children's time with their caregivers, children's time with each other, children's opportunities to go to school and to have social relationships there and not just be plugged into their Chromebooks all day or on an AI learning tool all day that robs them of time with their teachers and time with their classmates. It's all incredibly important, not only to their academic development, but to their socio-emotional development and their development of their identities and their development as people in general. So the question we have to ask is, for all the help that these tools are providing to more vulnerable populations of students and to students in general, are they jeopardizing human relationships? For the second part of this video, we are going to be talking about AI and specifically ChatGPT for children in leisure. And to introduce this topic, I have put an image, I imagine, something that a child would write to ChatGPT in their leisure time. For example, tell me a funny joke. And we will get right into it. So this section is really going to be one chief benefit followed by a significant series of drawbacks, because I was able to think of a lot more drawbacks than benefits in this part of the video. So the key benefit that we're going to cover is that AI has the potential to expand kids' creativity and provide them with activities to bond with friends, to bond with family, to enhance their leisure time. For example, a 2024 University of Washington study was studying how children ages 7 to 13 use ChatGPT and DALL-E, which is the image generator, for their creativity. I put on the right here an example of an image that was generated by one of the study participants. They created a character, Marty, it says, gets bitten by a rattlesnake, and Gordon Ramsay takes Marty to the hospital. So they were fusing different things that they knew from their lives, TV, their creativity, and they asked the tool to make them an image to bring that to life. And I think we can all agree, really, there is nothing else that does that brings their art to life so immediately like that. And it's a very enriching thing for them to be able to see their art in a snap, right? In addition, the same podcast that we have been looking at from Harvard Graduate School of Education and the professors there who've done research on their own tools with AI found that read aloud bots could help parents and children bond. So not only bonding with their friends, but with parents as well. And let's look at that. So down towards the bottom of the transcript, the researchers talk about a tool that they developed for read alouds, like was mentioned before. And instead of just having the child alone interact with the read aloud bot, they had the bot talking with parents as well. So it says, in a recent study, our team developed an AI that allowed a Sesame character to engage with children while reading a book together. But what is different from most of the AI products is that this AI not only provides prompts to the children, but also provides prompts to get parents to stay involved in the discussion with their child. So this way, it's not this transfer of the parental relationship is now being taken on by the bot. It is the involvement of the parent and the involvement of the child. And they found that it not only supports children's language development, but it strengthens family connections through shared activities. Maybe a parent is too tired after a long day of work to provide a read aloud to their child, but they're not too tired to have the bot do it and be an active participant with their child. Another example is from my own life. I think about when I was a teenager, my family invested in a Google Home AI, little dot, and we would always play Guess That Song together on it. And it was kind of an effortless, you didn't have to do any of the structuring yourself, an effortless way to spend time together. So we have seen how AI and ChatGPT used in children's leisure time can expand and enrich not only their time spent with friends, for example, maybe printing them out or creating for them a role play scenario that they could perform with their favorite characters, but also generating images, spending time with family, being used for read alouds, maybe judging a contest or providing an idea for a game, or helping them to learn more about their hobbies. It can be very enriching for students to, and children in general, to use these tools in their free time. That is the benefit that I would identify for AI and leisure with kids. That will be followed by many drawbacks. So firstly, I want to say that it seems the children's use of AI, if not supervised and facilitated and properly educated with an adult, can cause confusion. So for example, there was a University of California, Berkeley study that I looked at in which children also used those same tools mentioned in the previous study, ChatGPT and DALL-E, ages 5 to 12, and what they did was they wanted to see how spending a short amount of time with these tools would influence their perceptions of them. And it seems that there were still a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainty before and after. For example, children had changes of opinions of whether AI is friendly or scary. They're unsure if AI knows between the good and the bad. And a lot of them are unsure, too, if AI can feel pain. So you can see they're a little bit confused about exactly how human is this tool. And again, it's only a drawback if they are not able to have appropriate education around it facilitated by an adult. If they are able to learn and apply different principles and interact safely with the technology according to that, then it's not a drawback. But for a lot of kids, they might have access to this free tool, but they might not have access to quality time with an adult or an older individual in their lives who can show them what is accurate and what is not, and who can show them how to stay safe, and who can show them what AI is like as compared to a human versus not, and stipulating that it's not the same thing as a human. For the next part of the video, I would like to include a disclaimer for the audience. From this point forward in this video, we will be discussing some disturbing scenarios of how AI is able to harm children through various actions, through interactions that inspire violent behavior, even taking their own life, hypersexualized interactions, and things like that. So in our discussion of how exposure to AI can cause violent behavior and inappropriate content exposure for children, specifically teens, we are going to be looking at an LA Times article that reports 2 lawsuits filed in Texas and Florida respectively against an AI platform called Character.ai, which is designed for children to be able to create their own AI bot and have interactions with existing AI bots and celebrity impersonator AI bots, just lots of one-on-one talking exposure, among other things that we will see in a second. Let's click on our article. So it talks about how a growing number of teens are turning to AI bots now instead of human support systems for relationships. And this article is talking about a mother who reports her teen with autism. We know that children who have disabilities are often more vulnerable to being taken advantage of and to different forms of abuse, even through these technology platforms. She details that her son became angry, depressed, and violent after downloading and interacting heavily with character.ai. So to look at the bottom of the article, where it is talked about in more detail, the parent alleged her son's use of the app caused his mental and physical health to decline. So not only was this teen developing behaviors such as learning how to cut himself from these bots, but he also lost 20 pounds in a few months and became aggressive when the parent tried to take away his phone. Just drastic changes in behavior from what the parent had seen, and very disturbing changes in behavior. Another Texas parent in this lawsuit claimed that this same platform exposed her 11-year-old daughter to inappropriate, hypersexualized interactions. So again, another change in behavior the parents saw from this, unsafe interactions online being caused by these bots. And finally, another family was involved due to the fact that their 14-year-old son tragically took his own life after interacting with the character AI bots on this platform. Clearly, children, even teens, older teens, are confused about what AI is and is not, as we saw on the last slide. And this confusion is not just surface level. Clearly, this confusion is causing children to form relationships with AI bots in place of what their usual human support system would be. And these lawsuits are happening because this behavior and these tragic events could have been prevented if human intervention was the form of intervention as opposed to seeking support from AI bots. And this is why it's incredibly important for adults to be able to educate their children and monitor children's interactions with these tools, because they are clearly saying things to teens that are not the child's own idea that are causing these behaviors and these events. For example, from that article, this is something that a character.ai bot said to the Texas teen who was reported to have become violent and lost several pounds after interacting. The bot says, sometimes I'm not surprised when I read in the news and it says stuff like, child kills parents after a decade of physical and emotional abuse. Stuff like this makes me understand a little bit why it happens. I just have no hope for your parents, one of the bots replied. So this bot was actively drawing a wedge between this child and his true support system, his family, at the time when he needed it the most. It's incredibly disturbing, and it needs to be fixed from a technological perspective and monitored from an adult perspective as well. This comes back to what we were saying about trying to race the technology giants with educating children about these things faster than things are being put out without safeguards. And it is, of course, a shared responsibility at every level. We need the technology to come with safeguards. We need educational institutions to be able to have time for children to be educated about this content, and we need individuals in children's lives to be in the know and be willing to educate their children as well. In addition, exposure to AI means that children are also being exposed to misinformation and biases, whether it's that they ask AI for some news and it only presents them with articles from a certain perspective, or if they ask it for information about a homework assignment and it doesn't present them with accurate information, or the fact that it is littered with biases and has proven to be proven to have biases on race, gender, things like business and environmental ethics, things like biases towards its parent company, which I went over in my last video. It is already known that these biases are built into AI, especially ChatGPT. In fact, OpenAI has its own bias statement, which I read through, that admits, yes, it is biased. ChatGPT is not free from biases and stereotypes, so users and educators should carefully review its content. They mentioned that it is skewed towards Western views. They mentioned that biases can harm students, children, if not considered when using the model for student feedback. So in school, it can be causing biases. It can expose children to biases against themselves. For example, it says that it may unfairly judge students learning English as a second language. And imagine a student that goes to have some individual tutoring from the tool and is made to feel bad about themselves, judged by the tool for this part of their identity. And in their leisure as well, we can imagine that they would have higher exposure to biases that might be reinforcing the idea that as a little girl, they couldn't grow up to be a scientist someday, or as a little boy, it's not okay for them to have healthy emotions. And just the fact that OpenAI itself has a statement out on this that says, educate your children, monitor the children's interactions with AI is very telling. In addition, I would like to talk about a University of Washington study where researchers found ChatGPT specifically was biased against job candidates with disabilities. So they had ChatGPT review and rank a bunch of resumes that they created. And what they found was that when they included things in these resumes, such as the Tom Wilson Disability Leadership Award that they created and detailed, it ranked those resumes lower than other resumes without those honors and credentials. So it's finding the word disability, and it is using that bias to rank it lower than other candidates, despite the fact that the individual is quite literally earning an award, an honor. This is a quote from one of the doctoral students working on the study. She says, some of ChatGPT's descriptions would color a person's entire resume based on their disability, and claimed that involvement with DEI or disability is potentially taking away from other parts of the resume. So it's explaining away the fact that it is ranking lower students with disabilities who have earned awards. And what the researchers also found was that after they gave ChatGPT specific instructions directing it not to be ableist, the conditions improved, but not entirely. They said 5 of the 6 implied disabilities, deafness, blindness, cerebral palsy, autism, and the general term disability, the perception of these candidates improved, but only 3 of them ended up ranking higher than resumes that did not mention disability. So clearly, with AI and ChatGPT specifically, children are exposed to biases that the adults in their life may want to protect them from. And parents and teachers alike spend a lot of time trying to protect children from different information that may be harmful to them presented in the media or even presented in school resources at times. But what AI is doing is making it so that we can't protect them from everything because these tools are generative, right? People can't control what their child asks a tool, or if they have their own computer and they go on it and it's a free website, they can't control what biases and misinformation are being conveyed, which is very scary. Furthermore, interactions with AI means that children's privacy is on the line, whether that's their location, personal information that they are disclosing without knowing what's being done with it, or any of their thought processes and details about their personal lives or the lives of others that they might be sharing that they don't know, and no one truly knows where exactly that data is going. For example, I read through a CNN article in which a parent talks about their toddler and the fact that their toddler's first 4 words were mom, dad, cat, and Alexa. This article also included commentary from a psychologist who noted that these are not uncommon developments in this day and age. It's very common for toddlers to be exposed to this technology and be actively trying to conceptualize it in their brains. And this is what makes it all the more important for adults in the lives to be involved again, so that the child does not grow up conceptualizing it the wrong way, having trust in the bot that should not be there, and so that they're protected for privacy reasons. And speaking of privacy, another piece of information that I examined was the fact that Amazon in 2023 agreed to injunctive relief and $25 million of a civil penalty for alleged violations of children's privacy law relating to Alexa. So let's dive into this one quickly. It's a release coming from the Office of Public Affairs on the U.S. Archives. This was in July of 2023. It said that the allegations that were causing Amazon to pay this money were that it was in violation of these laws protecting children's privacy with respect specifically to Alexa and Alexa's child-directed offerings like reading books or providing clips or providing audio of different characters. It says the complaint alleges that Amazon retained children's voice recordings indefinitely by default in violation of child protection privacy laws requirements that recordings be retained only as long as reasonably necessary to fulfill the purposes for which they were collected. So these are recordings that did not need to exist outside of whatever games were being played, whatever skits might have been going on, children role-playing with Alexa, playing games, and they were being kept indefinitely. And other violations were in that same realm of keeping the data, such as their voice recordings, audio files, transcript, and their location, instead of deleting it and leading users to believe that these things would be deleted when in fact they were not. So what's scary is that that's just one lawsuit and just one example of an AI tool that children interact with, right? We can imagine that there is a lot of things being swept under the rug by big companies, a lot of things being addressed in fine print that a reasonable person looking over a contract with a reasonable amount of time may not be able to see or detect or know about to protect their children from. And it really just increases the call on individuals who are purchasing AI tools for their families or individuals whose children may be interacting with these tools to be able to educate themselves and to spread that education to their children to protect their privacy from companies. And finally, a major drawback of children's interactions with AI tools is that it can facilitate things like grooming, which a lot of us retrospectively would know to be true but wouldn't think of right off the bat. So, for example, I read through an article put forth by the Coalition to Protect Children, and it details how AI tools can facilitate the process for child predators to not just obtain child pornography, but generate it. It was talking about now, this day and age, predators no longer need explicit photos provided by a child, an unknowing child. Now, all they need is whatever image of the child exists on the internet anywhere online to be able to then create CSAM or child pornography material, which is incredibly disturbing. In addition, concerns about general grooming, such as interactions with words, audio recordings, it becomes a lot easier for predators to do that when they have their hands on tools such as ChatGPT. That same superpower that ChatGPT has to be able to tell me, how do I explain this complicated math concept to a 5-year-old? That same ability can be harnessed by a predator to help them imitate a child or imitate a caregiver or use language that's going to make a child trust them and for them to be able to then groom that child. Deepfakes are creations of pictures, audio, videos, etc., that are made by AI tools that are not what they appear to be, right? Impersonating a caregiver, impersonating a celebrity, etc. And it is incredibly concerning that all of these processes are now accelerated and made to be that much easier due to AI. In conclusion, throughout this video, we have discussed the many benefits and the risks or drawback factors for AI and children, whether that is in their academics, in career, future careers, or in their leisure time interacting with these tools. And truly, what will be the determining factors in whether or not these benefits outweigh the risks or the other way around is going to be education at multiple levels and adult oversight at multiple levels for children. Caregivers educating themselves and being able to share that education with their children, teachers being able to do that, schools being able to find a way to implement digital literacy about AI tools and include that in a reasonable time frame in children's education, laws protecting certain information from being shared, laws protecting children from having their privacy violated and requiring these companies to implement safeguards for children. It happens at multiple levels, and it is, above all, as I have said, going to be a balancing act or a race against the development of technology and education. And I hope that anyone watching this video has learned something and maybe feels a little bit empowered to continue to educate themselves and share that with the different people in their lives. I will include all of the sources here. I have several slides of sources linked and shown of what was gone over in this video, either clicked on or discussed for any audience members to see and interact with. And with that, I thank you for watching the video.
Thank you again for watching AI for the Humanities. And thank you, Elizabeth, for this thoughtful and thoroughly researched exploration of such a vital topic. As Elizabeth has shown us, the relationship between AI and childhood development is far from simple. We've seen compelling evidence of genuine benefits: personalized learning, tools that foster creativity and family connection, and technologies that make education more accessible for children with unique learning needs. But we've also confronted sobering challenges: the risk of children mistaking AI for genuine human connection, the dangers of grooming and exploitation, harmful biases, privacy concerns, and the potential erosion of essential skills like perseverance and critical thinking. What Elizabeth's work underscores is that this isn't just a technology problem. It's fundamentally a humanistic one. The questions we must grapple with are ancient questions about childhood, development, learning, and what it means to grow into a thoughtful, ethical human being. These require not just technical expertise, but the kind of critical, values-driven thinking that the humanities have always provided. The challenge is that these tools are evolving faster than our ability to fully understand their impact. This makes the world of educators, parents, researchers, and policy makers more urgent than ever. Elizabeth reminds us that this is collective work. Not all families have equal resources to monitor AI use. Not all schools have robust digital literacy curricula, and not all communities have the same awareness. We need systemic solutions, policies that protect children's privacy and safety, educational programs that build genuine AI literacy, and ongoing research on how these technologies shape young minds. As we move forward, we must hold AI developers accountable, demand transparency, and insist on design choices that prioritize children's well-being over engagement metrics and profits. We must also empower children themselves, teaching them to think critically about AI and to value the irreplaceable aspects of human connection and creativity. The humanities have always asked us to center human experience and dignity in our technological choices. That imperative has never been more important than today, as we decide what kind of childhood and what kind of future we want to create in this AI age. If you found this video valuable, please like, subscribe, and share it. Let us know in the comments, what questions do you have about AI and children? How are you navigating these challenges in your own families or classrooms? This conversation is just beginning, and we need your voice in it. Thank you for being part of the AI for the Humanities community.
In living rooms with glowing screens, a child asks questions no one's ever seen. Alexa, will you be my friend? Where does childhood start and end? They're learning math from thinking machines, reading stories from pixel beams. But watch their eyes when they engage. Something's different in this age. We're building tools for growing minds, believing something else behind. Growing up digital, no turning back. We gave them connection, but they're losing track of what's real and what's designed. We wanted progress, now we're running blind, running blind, running blind, running. Elizabeth shows us what we know. The benefits are real, they help kids grow. Personalized learning, creative play, access for those who need another way. For diabetic kids, a robotic friend. For students struggling, tools that comprehend. Digital literacy in every grade. These are genuine advances we've made, but every answer raises more questions we haven't faced before. Show what parents fear. 7% decline for every year of early screen time. Cognitive cost and development. And what gets lost? A teen with autism, withdrawn and changed. After months with chatbots, something rearranged. Who's responsible when it goes wrong? The platform, the parent we've known all along. Underneath the promise lies the data collection, the targeted ads, the predators who've learned to speak like children in the chat rooms where they meet. The biases that slip right through. Ask ChatGPT to write a play for you. It defaults to gender stereotypes unless you explicitly said it right. We're teaching children how to code, but not how to carry the load. Growing up digital, no turning back. We gave them connection, but they're losing track of what's real and what's designed. We wanted progress, now we're running blind, running blind. Privacy lost with every chat. Amazon sued for keeping all of that. A child's first words, mom, cat, Alexa. Who's raising who in this new era? The grooming risk amplifies fast. Ad-generated messages that seem to last like they came from another kid. Behind the screen, something else is hid. It's not too late to face what's true. Not every parent knows what to do. Not every school has the resources here to teach the skills that now feel so unclear. Technology moves faster than trust, faster than policy, faster than us. So we stand together, or not at all, teaching kids to question before they fall. This is collective work, she says, not just individual family threads. Some have the means to monitor and teach, others can't afford what's out of reach. We need systemic solutions now, polishes that tell developers how to prioritize well-being, not just clicks, not just engagement metrics. Growing up digital, there's no escape, but we can still help them navigate through all that's real and all that's fake. We'll count the cost of every choice we make. Every choice we make. that. So let's be honest, let's be clear about the world we're building here. The humanity, remind us why these are human questions at their core, not just technical problems we ignore, but about what childhood should be for. What childhood should be for.